have used to ask myself why I was the chosen one out of the millions of people.
That's a positive way to think about it, right? Yeah.
No, maybe kind of negative. Yeah, when I was little. Yeah, and but until I grew up in the mainstream society and studied in a mainstream school, and I found that I actually can work like or study like other normal people.
This is Andrian.
And this is Ray. Welcome to the Talk Lab podcast.
Every 2 weeks, we'll invite a new guest and
In every session, we'll dig into their life, relationships, and perspectives.
one question at a time.
Let's talk lab!
Yay. Welcome to the Talk Lab podcast. This is Andrian.
This is Ray.
This Christy.
So this time we have invited Christy on our 31st episode. And it's really something meaningful because from our briefing session, Christy is actually partially deaf, and it's really an inspiring story on how she basically overcame her disability and became who she is today. And I think it's really an inspiring story, and thank you again for Christy on being here, and thank you for Ray for inviting Christy on bringing something so meaningful, because we're just going to really deep dive into it. And on the first episode, we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion. And on the second episode, we mostly going to talk about workplace inclusion, but also we're just going to somehow wing it eventually. So hopefully it turns out okay. So I'm just going to let Ray or Christy to talk about herself, or if anything Ray want to add.
Yeah, so I think I just want to give the audience some context. Yeah, I think I resonate with Andrian. We are very grateful to have Christy. But this is actually the first time we're getting someone with some sort of, I want to say it in a very positive way, but I think the most positive way I can say it is hearing impairment, right? Yeah, that's, I think, a more neutral, more positive way to talk about disabilities, right? Because any disabilities is special. It brings out the uniqueness of that person, right? And I think today we're very, very lucky to get you. It's our first time, and probably also your first time on a podcast. But just to give some context on Christy first, before I actually pass time to Christy to introduce herself. So I think we really want to, let me finish up the point on giving a heads up to the audience, right? So in this episode, I think we'll be very inclusive. You might think, okay, do tune us on YouTube, right? Then you can see the whole process on how we actually communicate with Christy. So you might feel like, okay, maybe, Ray and Rian is speaking a bit slow, and we are speaking slow for a reason. So tune us in on YouTube, and then you can really see the interaction and how the whole behind the scene works. So yeah, with that out of the way, so Christy, we met because of a hackathon in Microsoft Hong Kong. So Christy was under the Labour and Welfare Department, Labour Department Bureau scheme. So you had the opportunity to work and be part of Microsoft Philanthropy's team, right? So that's how we met, and her story was just so inspiring that she was basically at 3 years old, right? She had some hearing impairment, and then she couldn't she slowly eventually lost her hearing, but she still overcome a lot of different obstacles. Yeah, so I'm not going to talk too much in my brief introduction. It's meant to be brief. Yeah, so I'll pass it to Christy. Why don't, from your perspective, you share, your whole story, who you are as a person, and what do you actually currently do to our audience. And then we can see how we can deep dive into your perspective.
Yeah, sure, and thank you, Ray. And my name is Christy, and I have hearing impairment, and I wear hearing aids on both of my ears since I was 3 years old. Due to an accident happened on me at that time, and I was dropped from the balcony, and I bumped my head on the floor. And that's why I have a hearing impairment right now. And I usually do lip reading and with the help of my hearing aid to communicate. And over the years, I am now almost severe to profound level of hearing loss. And I went to Australia when I was 15 years old on my own for high school study and university. And I went to Monash University and I applied for the disability service for my study, and they have arranged me with a note taker to sitting beside me in every classes to take a note for me of what the professor say in class. And this is how I learned in my university life. And I graduated from 2018 and I majored in banking and finance. So after my study, I came back to Hong Kong for job seeking, and it's quite hard for me and full of challenges, and because the employer is not willing to give me the opportunity to work, and I have seeking for a job for like over a year, and a year later I have found a job in Microsoft through the labor department and working as a corporate affairs assistant and diversity and inclusion ambassador in Microsoft Hong Kong. And now I am working as a hearing impaired youth ambassador in the Hong Kong Society for the Deaf. Yeah, so aiming to promote the diversity and inclusion and to promote our needs and our difficulties to the public. Yeah. This what I'm doing these 2 years.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Christy. I mean, for that introduction, right? And so you've been you mentioned that you could hear. So your whole situation was like, okay, at 3 years old you had an accident, and then slowly you have lost that hearing ability, right?
Yeah.
And then, so I think before we actually touch into, the work that you do, we actually want to understand more about when and how do you know that you were actually different from everyone else, and how did that whole journey of losing one of your sense, like hearing, how did that affect you growing up? Because you did briefly talk about, how you actually went through school, university and everything. So we really want to understand more from that perspective, how you went through that journey, and what were some of your internal thoughts going through that whole process.
So actually, when I was 3, the accident happened to me. I was still quite little to understand what is going on, and I have no idea that how I was different from others. So until I went to primary school, and the teacher there is always picking on me. Okay. Yeah, and the teacher hate me, and I cried every day, and I refused to go to school, and I never get passed in any exam, just 30 to 40 score
out of
in
100,
exam.
right?
Yes, out of 100.
Out of 50, right?
Yes. And so a year later, my parents decided to transfer me to another school. And maybe you won't believe that I have received an offer from an elite primary school, and the principal there didn't care about my past exam result and just hoped to give me an opportunity to start over again. So in this new school, I was given a lot of opportunity to participate in a competition, and I have joined the speech festival every year to boost my self-confidence and to address my pronunciation. Yeah, so I would say this year is definitely a turning point of my life, and I even get full mark in exam now. After I transferred to another school. About the question that how did I learn how to speak or communicate, when I was in kindergarten, I went to the speech therapy in a hospital, and they helped to address my pronunciation. And I also learned how to pronounce it while I was in primary school, and my mother has found a tutor for me, which is a Mandarin tutor, and he taught me how to use pinyin, how to use Mandarin pinyin to adjust my pronunciation. Yeah, and it's trying to move learning how to move my lips, my tongues, and my mouth for better pronunciation. Yeah, and
Yeah, you have anything you wanted to
Yeah,
share?
I think when I first encountered, I'm jumping a bit, but when I first met Christy, I was like, wow, she pronounced very well because from when I was in secondary school, I also had a friend, still have that friend, who also had like hearing impairment, but then Christy's pronunciation is very accurate, is very normal, and from the looks of it, you cannot tell that she even had hearing impairment. So I think it's a very something inspiring for a lot of people, including myself, to know that whatever you have, you just know if you keep going, if you persevere, you're gonna go through with it. And I think that's my point of view, and which leads to my question is, did you ever thought that you are unfortunate, or you somehow think that it might give you an experience to endure, and you can do even more in your life if I'm
Maybe let me try to, I'm not sure whether I'll simplify it or make it, but maybe just to get a more clearer understanding on where Andrin is coming from, right? So we did have that question as one of the topic. So you having this hearing impairment, do you see yourself being unfortunate, like you treat it as something negative, or you actually internalize it and think of it as something like a gift, or like you feel like, okay, because of this particular experience, you now have a voice and a responsibility to actually help, because like I think that's really what you're actually driving for, right? Like one of the ambassadors in the Deaf Society, you were one of the advocates for D&I in Microsoft Hong Kong. Yeah, so from your perspective, yeah, it's very casual. Like you can share based on what you feel, how this whole hearing impairment kind of experience have shaped you to who you are, and whether you think like it's something negative or positive. So that's really, we want to really understand some of your thoughts and views on it.
Actually, I have used to ask myself why I was the chosen one out of the millions of people.
That's a positive way to think about it, right? Yeah.
No, maybe kind of negative. Yeah, when I was little. Yeah, and but until I grew up in the mainstream society and studied in the mainstream school, and I found that I actually can work like or study like other normal people. Yeah. So I'm trying very hard to try to close the gap between me and other normal people. So I started to realize that something what they can do, I can do as well, or even better. Yeah. So this is how I start to accept who I am. Yeah. And become more positive. Yeah. And
Yeah, can I just make a quick comment on whatever that you've just shared? So I think to our listeners out there on this Talk Lah podcast, right? Basically, just give some context. I mean, I think the whole idea of why we started this Talk Lah is so that we can really understand different stories or life experiences of different people, right? And you, Christy, is like really someone that even after having some sort of very negative event, right? You still somehow find acceptance and find positivity. And I think in return, right, like just going back to, I think before going to that point, I also just wanted to let our audience know that, you are really doing a lot, like have a lot of courage to do this kind of stuff. And especially, because we do the our podcast predominantly in English, right? Yeah, and we, like Christy's first language is like Guangdonghua or Putonghua. She, learned how to speak using Pinyin, not really on English. So really respect and appreciate you to be more inclusive to our podcast, to our listeners, right? Even though I think because some of our listeners are from other regions, right? And they may not understand Cantonese. So we really, really appreciate, and it shows you that, being inclusive is not just like, okay, people that are, quote, normal, being inclusive to people with some sort of disabilities. It also means, like, from disabilities wise, like how they are also inclusive to normal people, right, and the daily life. So going to the point, yeah, I picked up like okay, you actually had a very normal education and childhood, which was something very, very interesting and eye-opening for me to know. And you said, like, okay, the principal allowed you to go to elite school, a primary school that was very good in Hong Kong, right? And that also allowed you to be more comfortable with who you are, and of course with your practice on how to go on to competitions, speech competitions specifically. So that really inspired and really made me think, like, okay, even if you have something that is I can't think of a better word to say it, but I'll use disability, pardon me if it's like negative, that you actually work on it and then eventually overcome, and then you feel like you're actually part of, our organization, and now with a mission to actually, help other people with similar experience or similar disabilities go through life. Yeah, so I think that's really, really what I've picked up from. Yeah.
I have something to, and just I know, just now I was like but I don't know what to say, like facing Christy, because
It's the first time, right?
it's the first time, and I think it's just something so inspiring, and I'm sort of speechless sometimes, like just talking to Christy, even though like she is very normal, she's just like a normal person, and I think it's just very inspiring to me. I'm like a listener to the Talk Live podcast right now in live. So I think what I picked up just now is, even though I sort of lost my thought already, but I think what I was thinking is, you're the principal, really believe in you that you can do and become like a normal person, right? He doesn't, or she, the principal doesn't see you as someone with hearing impairment, and give you opportunities to do even more, to make you believe in yourself, to have faith in you. And I think that was really important, right? It gives you self-confidence to also believe in yourself, especially at a young age, because when you are young, if you got bullied, or if other students were bullying you because you cannot hear, because I think when we're younger, especially in primary school, you just see someone as different. They don't see, or they don't relate. They will just isolate you. But I think your principal and probably your school gave you so much support that you start to believe in yourself, and you start to become like a normal person, as well as having like a support system from learning from Pinyin. And I think is that did that contribute to you in a way, even though you sort of mentioned it, but is it a critical part, or your parents were your support system as well?
So I would say actually a supportive learning environment is really, really important for a childhood development. So we need, no matter for people with disability or normal people. So and also the most importantly, we need to be confident in ourselves and confident that we can do everything. And like even if I have the disability, like I was hearing impaired, but I believe something I can do do in different ways. So like maybe I'm not able to talk on the phone because I do lip reading, but actually there are numbers of ways to communicate with others. Maybe like at work we can use email, or for daily communication we can use WhatsApp or whatever application. Yeah, so I believe there are a lot of ways to do the same things. Yeah, so we can explore more. Yeah.
Okay. I think in terms of workplace inclusion, which you did brought up some hints, so I think stay tuned for episode 2. I think we will cover more about workplace inclusion and how you can actually make it a more inclusive kind of environment to, let different kinds of people be able to contribute to the work, right? And make it a workplace for everyone. But I think we also wanted, like in this episode, I think since Andrew also raised on the point, and you also elaborated more on the support system that you had, right? On how that have helped you gain more confidence in yourself, the people that have helped you learn how to speak with this kind of hearing impairment situation. Yeah, so I think because to all the civil servants, I should not to say social workers out there, or people that are in that industry to really help people with disabilities. Okay, I'm using that word again, but mind me. Yeah. Anyway, just hear me out. There, people with some sort of special needs. Yeah. There's actually a lot of people in that, and I think in this part we really want to understand from your perspective, being someone with this kind of special needs, I would say. How did, like, for example, for you, it would be more like you mentioned that you went to see speech therapists, right? Or you had like a teacher to actually dedicate time to help you learn the Pinyin pronunciation. Yeah. So how did that, like, did you attribute a lot of their effort to your current success today? So who you are today, do you actually really appreciate, or like how did they actually impact you? Yeah, put it that way. How did they impact you in your journey to be who you are today, to be able to speak, to be able to still, interact with normal people? Yeah, just wanted to understand more perspective on that. Sorry, it's like a long way to ask the question, but yeah, I talk too much. Yeah, here you go, Christy.
Christy doesn't even know the question now.
Yes, there are a lot of questions in one time.
Yeah. Okay, if I were to summarize,
Okay.
how did those speech therapists, that whole process, impact your journey? Yeah, because I think this part I really want to understand from your perspective how their work actually helps people like you or people with special needs. Yeah.
Because I went to the speech therapist when I was little, and I think just around 1 to 2 years, and I went to the hospital regularly. And I think the speech therapist is super important because it let you know how to let you learn how to speak and how to communicate with others. And I think the most important people to me in my speech therapy process is my tutor, my Mandarin tutor. Yeah, I think it is how I really learn how to pronounce accurately. Yeah, and I went to the audiologist too, and they helped me to adjust my hearing aid, to adjust maybe the volume, the frequency, and the background noise filtration, and to adjust it to the setting that I am most comfortable with. Because sometimes if we go Yamcha, the background noise is super super loud. Yeah, and I feel really headache. So that's why we need to go to the audiologist, and they help to adjust our setting and minimize the background noise. Yes.
Yeah, I think I picked up on that because when we had breakfast, we were saying that we were saying that actually having in COVID, you're having more difficulty, right? Because everyone's wearing a mask, you cannot really hear people projecting their sound. Also, you cannot read their lips, and I think that is also a hard.
Yeah, it is actually quite hard time for us because I cannot read everyone lip as the lip is hidden under the mask, and I become more or less independent during these 2 years because sometimes I need my friends or my family accompany me, like going to the doctor, going to the bank, and any service. Yes, yeah. It's quite hard, but luckily, fortunately, I have my friend beside me and my family who always help me and support me. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think to our listeners out there that are listening, right? Like you never know who is in need and how much of a role that you play to your friends, right? Yeah, and I think if you meet Christy or if you're tuning in on YouTube, you will see like actually Christy is like a very normal like individual. You won't know that she has some sort of hearing impairment. Yeah, you will never know. Yeah, so it's always important to approach people like how you would approach your family. Yeah, make them more inclusive and don't take things for granted. And I think picking out like what the points that Andrian and Christy have shared, coming back full circle that you don't go through tough times alone. Never just yourself. Of course, yourself, your mindset is very important, but you need a team of people. Yeah, like for example, the principal that have played a role to get you in the school. You know, your Mandarin tutor to patiently teach you pinyin. Yeah, your family support system, your friends, right? The way that they interact, and at the workplace, employees, right? So it's a whole team effort, and like attracts like, right? That's what we preach in this podcast. So if you have a good mindset, you have the right mindset to do things, you get. So going and segmenting to a way now, okay, since we're in Hong Kong, right? And you grew up in Hong Kong, but you also spent some time in Australia, right? So maybe you can share your perspective. Do you agree that, Hong Kong is a very diverse and are we inclusive as a society in Hong Kong? What do you think about that? And how does it correlate with, Australia, let's say your time at Monash?
I would say in Hong Kong, we still need more improvement. Yeah. Because the employment rate of disability is still very low, and I think because the employer may need to embrace a growth mindset to understand that we are also able to work and we are capable to work as well, and maybe because the public is also lack of understanding of us, and they think we are only capable for the blue collar job with only low pay, but actually we have the ability and we have the potential, but all we need is just an opportunity. Yeah, and I think there is a lack of resources for the disability, like the learning resources at school or some equipment that assist us at work. Yeah, I think the government may need more promotion on this field. Yeah.
I think we really need to I guess more understanding. We in this whole podcast we always talk about inclusiveness, and also for a lot of the interviewees that we have, we also always talk about Jiming or like Becky. We always talk about inclusion. So, but there's no but. It's just, so are there any takeaways that you think from your whole journey for anyone that is going through a hearing impairment or any disability? Is there something that you want to give them advice to, or maybe they're down, they lost faith? What do you recommend, or what advice do you have for people that are in similar situations?
You mean some advice for other people with disability? Actually, I want to say the most important, yes. Don't think the disability is an obstacle in your life, and because they can be done in many different ways. Just find out the most suitable and the most comfortable way, so you can also do the same thing like the normal people did.
I think
Yeah.
just branching out to I think we always ask that to our guests, like what's your takeaway, and you did mention that okay, it's the mindset, right? Like you shouldn't treat challenges or obstacles as something that will discourage you. Instead, like think of it like have a positive mind, right? But going specifically to yourself. So if you put yourself in your shoes as you're growing up, and also currently today, right? Because you're still very young, right? I mean, we all still very young. What do you think helped you the most when when you have all that negative down thoughts, and what made you, or what personal value that made you feel like you can make it, you can live a normal life? And I think that perspective would really help a lot of our listeners out there, whether we are normal people with special needs. I think just having that advice or like takeaway would be very meaningful.
You put Christy in a very tough
Yeah.
spot, right? But
No, but I think it's a probably you can take some time to think about that.
you can think of that when I speak a bit of my own experience.
Yeah.
When I'm down, I like, because everyone has their own like
way
time
of doing.
of being negative, on thinking that they are not worth it somehow, right? You always have self-doubt, but for me to overcome it is to like really have friends, really just believing or doing something that you think that is worthwhile doing, and you need to find yourself again, right?
So you mean how to get through those negative
Yeah.
things?
So that, and that could be one way of thinking. But I think if there's one thing that you feel that so far on your whole journey, going through all the different life experience that you had, right? What was that one thing? Like for Andren, it's like okay, he really rely on his friends, share and talk to them, and then he feel better, and then he'll go through it and like okay, that day is shit, so what, that event is bad, so what, then and then he, after talking to his friends, he'll feel good, and that gets him through all the negative things in life. So for you, I'm sure you have a lot, maybe too many, and that's why it's very hard to pinpoint one. Maybe you can share like one or two, or to like before we end on this episode. What's that one thing, your go-to thing? Go-to meaning like okay, what's that thing that will always make you feel that today is worth living, tomorrow is worth pursuing?
Maybe the hardest time for me is in Australia, that I went there on my own and without my family and without any friends there, and I start all over again, like learning new language and meeting new people and learning the new culture. So these all are really hard for me, and I call back home at that time and crying to my mom that can I come back to Hong Kong? But so like a few months of homesick, and then I start to meeting new friends, and because I was required to study in a language school before going to the local school in Australia. And I meet my new friend and my best friend there, and they understand about my hearing problem, and they provide support to me, and they understand that maybe sometimes I'm not able to hear what the teacher are talking about, and because especially in whole English, and because in Australia this is multinational company.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people and teachers are coming from different countries and Indian.
So they have different
Yeah,
accents,
very,
right?
yeah, and the accent I really cannot understand. Even I asked my friend if they can understand what the teacher is saying about, and they say, I don't.
They
It's
don't
very
understand,
hard
yeah.
for them to understand as well, and so I understand it's not really my problem. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for
Yeah.
me, and so my friend did a lot, really helped me a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and even in class, they have this in university, and they have the disability surveys, and which is arranging a note taker, which I found that Hong Kong didn't have this service. Yeah, and so I think Hong Kong they need a lot of improvement on it. Yeah, and other than my note taker and my friends also help me in class, sitting next to me and telling me what the teacher are talking about, and I was really afraid that teachers will pick me to answer the question and I cannot hear what they are talking about, so I usually will tell the teacher before my class. Yeah, and yeah, one more thing. When I was in secondary school, when I was in high school in Australia, and one day the teacher, he asked me, suddenly asking me to take that off in class. Yes, it was in class. It was having the math class, and he asked me to take that off. I'm wondering what are you talking about. So I think he was talking about my earring. Yeah, so I take off my earring, and but he continued to say, take that off. So I was really embarrassed at that moment. Yeah, because it was in front of the whole
Yeah,
class
the whole
of
lecture
people.
together, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know what I can do. And my friend, she has observed this moment,
Yeah.
and she helped me. She go out and helped me to tell the teacher about my hearing impairment problem, and so she was definitely like an ally to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, she can observe that I was in an awkward moment.
Yep.
Yeah, and she understand my needs. So the teacher realized what happened, and he apologized to me. Yeah. So I think while I was in Hong Kong, family is important, and while I was in Australia, friends are the most important. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think. Yeah, guys. Like, I mean, if you guys couldn't get the message strong enough, yeah, just a quick summary that, you know, whether it's myself, Adrian, or even Christy, right? Yeah, you can see like actually support system. Like if I were to summarize, it's like your support system actually helps you go through tough times. So it's very, very important, like what you say, to understand who are friends, who are people that can be your ally.
Yeah.
Because you know that you can rely on them when shit happens. Yeah. And then you basically go through that journey together. So I think with that, I think we can wrap things up. And yeah, really, really appreciate your honest sharing. And also, I think Andrew and I, we are very happy to listen this side of the story. Yeah. So I think we can wrap
Yeah.
our episode. Yeah.
So thank you once again for Christy on being on our first episode. And next episode we're gonna talk more about workplace, and also we're just gonna wing it as I mentioned. So comment, like, subscribe, and share.
Yeah, really, really appreciate if you guys can tune in to YouTube. Then you can actually see, you know, how we've done the interaction and yeah, how we interact, and hopefully we provided a more inclusive environment to you, Christy, right? Hopefully it was good. Yeah. So thank you very much, Christy.
Thank you.
Stay tuned to episode 2.
Bye-bye.
Bye.